Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell for more true crime story. On the outside, they looked like any other kids, laughing in school halls, scrolling on their phones, posing for selfies. But underneath, something far darker was brewing. A rage, a silence, a desire to do harm that would soon shatter families and shock the nation. When people hear the words killer or murderer, they picture hardened adults, menacing figures shaped by years of crime. What they don't expect is the 13-year-old girl sitting quietly in a math class, or the 15-year-old boy walking his dog after stabbing his best friend to death the night before. The idea that a child could commit cold-blooded murder is something society isn't ready to face. But the reality is, some of the most disturbing crimes in American history were committed by teenagers, and in some cases by children barely old enough to ride a bike. The rise of the unthinkable. In recent decades, the United States has seen an alarming number of violent crimes committed by youths. Some were driven by rage, others by a twisted sense of adventure. But the most chilling were those that seemed planned, executed with the precision of an adult killer, not the impulse of a hormonal teen. Take, for example, the 1993 case of 12-year-old Eric Smith, who lured a 4-year-old boy into the woods, strangled him, and crushed his head with a rock. When asked why he did it, Eric chillingly responded, "I just wanted to see what it felt like." Or the 2004 case of 14-year-old Joshua Phillips, who murdered his 8-year-old neighbor and hid her body under his bed for days, attending school and meals as if nothing had happened. These weren't accidents. They were choices, premeditated, calculated, executed. How does a teen become a killer? Criminologists, psychologists, and law enforcement professionals have spent years trying to answer this question. The answers are never simple. In some cases, the killers grew up in abusive households. In others, they were neglected or bullied. But there are also cases where the teen had no apparent trauma or history of violence, just a desire to kill. The mind of a teenage killer is a battleground of contradictions. Their brains are still developing, especially in areas that control judgment, impulse, and empathy. But that doesn't mean they're incapable of evil. In fact, some are disturbingly aware of the consequences of their actions and choose to kill anyway. The faces behind the crimes. Let's rewind to the case of Morgan Geyser and Anissa Weier, two 12-year-old girls from Wisconsin who, in 2014, lured their friend into the woods and stabbed her 19 times. Their motive? To appease a fictional internet character named Slender Man. The victim survived, crawling out of the woods to find help, but the attack left the world stunned. Not just because of its brutality, but because of how calmly the girls had planned it. Morgan, in particular, showed signs of psychosis. She later claimed she didn't feel empathy, even as her friend bled out. Anissa followed along, afraid of losing her friend's approval. This case showed that killer kids don't always act out of rage. They sometimes act out of delusion, desperation, or influence. When rage takes over, not every case involves premeditation. Some teen killers act in moments of uncontrollable anger. In 2007, 13-year-old Daniel Petrick shot both of his parents after they banned him from playing a violent video game. His father survived. His mother didn't. Daniel hadn't plotted for weeks or written a manifesto. He just snapped. And that raises another question. Are these kids criminals? Or are they victims of unchecked mental health issues, exposure to violence, or emotional instability? The line between impulse and intention is thin, and the consequences are always devastating. Society's double standard. When a teen commits murder, the system stutters. Do we try them as children or as adults? Are they capable of rehabilitation, or are they lost causes? Public opinion swings wildly. Some cry out for justice. Others demand mercy. But the families of victims are left with the same pain either way. One thing is clear. Labeling these cases as exceptions no longer fits the data. Teen killers aren't anomalies. They're becoming more common, and their methods are growing more calculated, setting the stage for the unthinkable. As we move deeper into this story, we'll examine the ingredients that often mix to create a young killer. Home environment, peer pressure, trauma, mental health, and the disturbing influence of internet culture. We'll hear from experts who have studied these minds and families who never saw it coming. Because while the question remains, what turns a teen into a killer? The answers may lie closer to home than we'd like to admit. It always seems to come out of nowhere. Quiet teen, a well-behaved child, a student with decent grades. Then boom, headlines that shatter everything we thought we knew. But the truth is, the signs were often there all along. We just didn't know how to read them. In the aftermath of teen murders, teachers, neighbors, and even parents often say the same haunting words. We never saw it coming, but psychologists, FBI profilers, and juvenile justice experts say something different. You weren't looking close enough. The subtle red flags. Teenagers are moody. That's normal. But when moodiness turns into violent obsession, it's not just adolescence. It's a red flag. In several high-profile cases, young killers showed early signs of aggression, obsession with death, cruelty to animals, or fascination with weapons. Yet, those behaviors were brushed off as just a phase. Take the case of Luke Woodham, a 16-year-old from Mississippi who, in 1997, stabbed his mother to death and then opened fire on his classmates, killing 2 and injuring 7. Before the attack, Luke wrote disturbing entries in his journal about wanting to kill. He tortured his dog to death and bragged about it. His classmates said he often talked about death. His teachers noted his drawings grew darker and more violent. His mother didn't intervene. By the time the truth came to light, it was too late. The role of mental illness. One of the most misunderstood aspects of teen violence is the role of mental health. Not all teen killers are mentally ill, but many suffer from undiagnosed or untreated disorders. Schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, depression, conduct disorder, or psychosis. But how do you distinguish between a troubled teen and a dangerous one? Experts look for patterns. Withdrawal from social life, sudden changes in personality, violent fantasies, obsession with school shootings or past killers, self-harm or harming pets, detailed threats, even if made as a joke. Often, these warning signs are dismissed. Schools lack resources, parents fear stigma, and in some homes, kids are left alone with violent video games, disturbing online content, and zero supervision. The internet's dark influence. In today's digital age, many young killers aren't just acting alone. They're being inspired. Forums on the dark web, chat rooms filled with hate speech, even YouTube videos glorifying mass shooters. These all act as accelerants for vulnerable teens. And the algorithm is not always working in our favor. Search one video about Columbine, and soon your feed is flooded with similar content. For a teen already teetering on the edge, that kind of reinforcement can be deadly. In 2018, Demetrius Pagortzis, a 17-year-old in Texas, opened fire at his high school, killing 10. On social media, he had posted images of trench coats, guns, and satanic symbols. He even wore a Born to Kill t-shirt to school. Yet, no one said a word until it was too late. Missed chances to intervene. In over 80% of school shootings, at least one person knew the attacker had a plan. Sometimes it's a classmate, sometimes a friend or a sibling, but they stay quiet out of fear, disbelief, or not wanting to snitch. But inaction is deadly. Take the case of Nicholas Cruz, who murdered 17 people at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in 2018. He had a long history of violent behavior. He was reported to the FBI. He was expelled. He posted threats online. Yet somehow no one stopped him. What more did he have to do? Family dynamics and denial. In many cases, the home environment plays a massive role. Abuse, neglect, violence. But what's more disturbing are the homes that look perfect on the outside. Yet inside, the child feels invisible, misunderstood, or smothered. Some teen killers come from broken homes. Others from wealthy, ideal families. But what unites many of them is emotional disconnect. Feeling unloved, unheard, or unwanted. Parents may suspect something is wrong, but fear, shame, or denial keeps them from seeking help. The warning signs are hidden under "he's just stressed," or "she's going through a phase." Sometimes love blinds us. Other times it paralyzes us. It doesn't have to end in blood. Not every child showing these signs becomes a killer. Intervention matters. Mental health support works. Open conversations at school and at home save lives. Programs that teach emotional regulation, empathy, and nonviolent conflict resolution are changing outcomes. But they're not everywhere. And in many communities, they're non-existent. So what can be done? Start paying attention. Take threats seriously. Remove the stigma around mental health. And above all, listen. Because sometimes, the only thing standing between a thought and a tragedy is one adult who chooses to act. When a teenager commits murder, one question immediately arises. Was it a sudden emotional outburst or a cold, calculated plan? This question doesn't just influence how the public reacts. It can change everything about how the legal system handles the case. If it was a snap, an impulsive moment of rage, some might argue for leniency. But if the teen strategized the murder, wrote about it, fantasized about it, and executed it step by step, that's a different kind of fear. Alyssa Bustamante, a murder by curiosity. One of the most haunting examples is the case of Alyssa Bustamante, a 15-year-old from Missouri. In 2009, Alyssa lured her 9-year-old neighbor, Elizabeth Olton, into the woods. There, she strangled her, slit her throat, and buried her in a shallow grave she had dug days earlier. After the murder, Alyssa wrote in her diary, "I just **ing killed someone. I strangled them and slit their throat and stabbed them. It was amazing. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was a teen testing what it felt like to kill. She had planned it, fantasized about it, and even practiced digging graves." Alyssa later said she wanted to know what it felt like to end a life. The court saw no remorse, just chilling detachment. The heat of the moment. When teens snap. Not all teen killers are like Alyssa. Some truly do snap. Take Adrian Beltra, 16, who stabbed his best friend during a heated argument over a girl. Witnesses said the confrontation escalated within seconds. No planning, no premeditation, just raw, overwhelming emotion. Criminologists say these cases fall into the category of affective violence. Emotional, impulsive, and often regretted immediately. What the brain tells us. Science plays a big role in separating the snaps from the strategies. The teen brain is not fully developed, especially the prefrontal cortex, responsible for impulse control and decision-making. Teens struggle to foresee long-term consequences, are more influenced by peer pressure, react emotionally rather than logically. But neuroscience also tells us this. Some teens plan murders with the same level of sophistication as adults. And that's when intent becomes clear. Columbine, the blueprint for planned violence. Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, the Columbine shooters, were teenagers, but their actions weren't spontaneous. They stockpiled weapons, recorded tapes explaining their motives, set bombs as distractions, detailed their plan for months in journals. Experts believe Eric Harris was a textbook psychopath, cold, manipulative, and void of empathy, while Dylan was depressed and easily influenced. Their combination was explosive. Columbine changed the way the world saw school shooters. It proved teens could plot mass murder with military precision. Inside the mind of teen planners, some teens show signs of antisocial personality disorder or psychopathy. Others battle untreated bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, or severe trauma. In a study by the U.S. Secret Service and Department of Education, over 75% of school shooters had told someone about their plan beforehand, yet no action was taken. These aren't just isolated cases. They reveal a terrifying truth. Many teen killers leave trails, clues, threats, messages, before acting. And when those signs are ignored, the consequences are deadly. Curiosity, revenge, and fame. Why do they kill? Motives vary. Some want to feel power or control. Others seek revenge on bullies or abusive parents. Some want to be remembered, infamous rather than invisible. Whatever the motive, the result is the same. Innocent lives lost and families torn apart. A final distinction: impulse or planning, emotion or calculation. Both can be deadly. But understanding which one applies is critical, not just for justice, but for prevention. Because if a teen has planned a murder, there were warning signs. And if we can spot them early, we might stop the next one before it's too late. When the headlines fade and the courtrooms clear, we're left with the toughest question of all. Can teen killers be rehabilitated? Or are they beyond saving? Across the country, juvenile justice systems are split. On one side are those who see young killers as products of trauma, mental illness, and failed environments. On the other are those who believe some kids, no matter their age, are simply dangerous. Take Centoya Brown, for example. At age 16, she was convicted of killing a man she claimed had solicited her for sex. The public saw her as both a killer and a victim of trafficking, abuse, and neglect. Years later, her case was reevaluated, and she was granted clemency after serving 15 years. Today, she's an advocate for reform. But contrast her story with Lionel Tate, once the youngest American sentenced to life in prison. At 12, he killed a 6-year-old girl while imitating wrestling moves. After his release, he was arrested multiple times. Did the system fail him, or was he never truly ready for freedom? Experts agree that not all young offenders are the same. Some suffer from untreated mental illness, while others show signs of psychopathy, a condition marked by lack of empathy, remorse, or emotional connection. But psychopathy in teens is controversial. Can a child be declared incapable of change? In recent years, neuroscience has made a strong case for second chances. The adolescent brain, particularly the prefrontal cortex, is still developing. This means teens are more likely to make impulsive decisions, struggle with empathy, be influenced by peer pressure. That doesn't excuse murder, but it can explain behavior and help shape better responses. Rehabilitation programs, like those in Missouri and parts of California, focus on therapy, education, and emotional regulation. The goal? To treat the cause, not just the crime. One former teen offender who participated in such a program said, "I never thought about the consequences. I didn't even know how to deal with my own feelings. Nobody ever taught me." Still, the public isn't always forgiving. In high-profile cases, especially those involving younger victims, calls for justice often drown out calls for rehabilitation. Even if science says change is possible, society may not want to take the risk. Victims' families often oppose early releases. Understandably so, their pain is permanent. Their loved ones don't get second chances. So we're left at the crossroads of morality and justice. Should we punish teen killers for who they were at the time of the crime, or for who they could become? Ultimately, the answer may lie in case-by-case evaluations, balancing the horror of the act with the hope for redemption. Because while some killers wear their evil like a mask, others are crying out for help behind theirs. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell for more true crime story.